بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعزائي طلبة المرحلة الثانية للدراسات الصباحية والمسائية، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسعدني التواصل معكم في المحاضرة الفيديوية الأولى لمادة الصوت للفصل الدراسي الثاني. هذه المحاضرة هي إعادة توضيح للصفحات اللي قمت برفعها على موقع جوجل كلاس روم اللي يخص مادة الصوت. دعيت أنا طلاب المسائي وزودتهم عن طريق ممثلين الشعبة أن ينضمون للكلاس. راح نلتقي إن شاء الله يعني عن طريق المحاضرة الفيديوية يوم الأحد أو الأربعاء. ممكن يكون هناك وقت محدد لأن أتوقع يصدر جدول بهالخصوص. أتمنى الكل يكون بخير، وأدعو الله أن يرزقنا وإياكم الصحة والعافية والسلامة، وأنه يعني تنجلي هذه الأزمة ونرجع لمقاعد الدراسة إن شاء الله بأقرب وقت. هذا عنوان الإيميل أدرس مالتي إذا حد يحب يتواصل في حال وجود أي سؤال. أيضا بإمكانكم التواصل معي عن طريق الفيسبوك أكاونت أو الواتساب أو الفايبر نمبر. بالنسبة للمفردات المنهج، هذه مفردات المنهج للفصل الدراسي الثاني اللي أصلا كانت مبدئيا موزعة على 16 أسبوع، بس مثل ما تلاحظون أنا يعني ما يعني متوقع إنه الأزمة إن شاء الله ما تستمر، بس في حال إنه استمر الوضع على ما هو عليه لا سمح الله حتى نكون بالسيف سايد. وزعت يعني المواد حتى نحاول نكملها إن شاء الله، يعني حد أقصى 5 أسابيع. المادة إن شاء الله يعني يحتاج بس شوية تركيز، مادة مو صعبة. للتذكير الصفحات اللي يعني رفعتها على جوجل كلاس روم اللي تخص الفقرة الأولى هي ال Problems and Phonemic Analysis من الكتاب، واللي ما عند الكتاب أيضا أنا رفعت نسخة منه على يعني بصيغة PDF. الصفحات المطلوبة للفقرة الأولى Problems and Phonemic Analysis هي الصفحات 97 to 117. إن شاء الله يعني نحاول أن نختصر بما لا يأثر على يعني جودة المادة وفهمكم لها. In today's lecture, we will aim at looking at problematic sounds in English. We will see what are the problematic sounds in English, and these sounds, I mean, why do they create problems in doing phonemic analysis? The second aim is to investigate the phonological context where they occur. The third one is to find tips on solving phonemic analysis. We will present some recommendations, and we will try to do, if we have time, to do some phonemic analysis practices. And I would prefer that we have this last one in next lectures, separated lectures, I mean, or separate lectures. As you all know, speech is composed of phonemes. When these speech sounds are produced, it will be possible to identify which phoneme belong to which letter. There are two main ideas of difficulty when we will learn about the phonology of English. The first one is called problem of analysis, while the second one is called problem of assignment. And we will see, we will have some information about it. The first problematic group of consonants or phonemes is the group of affricates or affricate sounds. As you all know, that in English there are two affricate consonants, which are ch and j. As beginners, we will think that each one of these is a combination of two separate sounds, because we already know that this is the symbol for t and this is the symbol for ch. The same for this is the symbol for d and This is the phonetic symbol of J. It will be possible to treat each affricate as a single consonant phoneme. In this case, we will have what we call the one phoneme analysis, which is the preferable. We need to follow this one. Now, for naive or beginner learners of English, and even beginner speakers, native speakers, we will think about ch as not one sound, but rather two separate sounds, and the same for j. In this case, we will have what we call the two phoneme analysis. The problem in having the two phoneme analysis is that we will going to expand the number of phonemes. And as you notice, basically this is the phonetic transcription of a word like church, and this is the phonetic transcription of a word like George. When we separate ch into two different sounds in a sequence, we will expand the number of phonemes from 3 into 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just forget about this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the two phoneme analysis, we expanded the number of phonemes, which is a problematic one, because we will see how it works. There are a number of arguments that go in favor to support the one phoneme analysis. Why do we prefer the one phoneme analysis? I know that this is the phonemic analysis that tends to be established, but because phonetically ch is a combination, or it looks like a combination of two different sounds or consonants, we need to explain this. Why do we prefer the one phoneme analysis? Why do we need to look at ch as one and two and not two sounds, and the same for j? The first argument is called the phonetic or allophonic argument. According to this argument, we would clarify the realization of a sound, ch and j. It could be shown that the phonetic quality of the t and sh, or d and j for j, is clearly different from realizations of t, sh, d and j found elsewhere in similar context. This will support the analysis of ch and j as separate phonemes. For example, it might be claimed that sh in hutch is different from the same sh in hush. If we do believe that sh is different, this sh is different from this, we are following the one phoneme analysis. The same for t. This argument is a weak one. We are following the two phoneme analysis, not the one phoneme analysis in this case. This argument is weak. This tends to be weak. Reason? Because it doesn't give clear evidence that such phonetic differences exist. And even if there were such evidence, it would be easy to produce explanations for the differences that did not depend on phonemic analysis, but rather on phonetic analysis and boundaries. That's to say, the position of the word boundary in watch, apes, and watch shapes. Here is the boundary between the two, while here, the boundary between two. In this case, we do separate these two sounds, but the matter is that this ch is not this sh, this ch. Okay? We'll have extra examples. Sorry. The second argument is called the consonant distribution argument. According to this argument, we will consult how these sounds behave, how they are produced, how they are distributed in terms of syllable elements. It can be argued, and when we say argued or argument, we are not supporting the one phoneme analysis, but we will falsify the two phoneme analysis. because when we argue, we need to give evidences. Otherwise, the argument will be rejected. It could be argued that the proposed names ch and j have distributions similar to other consonants, while other combinations of plosive plus fricative do not. For example, if we think that t and ch are two sounds, not one, logically, we need to have the same sequence of same group of sounds in the initial, medial, and final position. For example, if we have this sequence as two separate sounds, why don't we have, for example, these combinations, which are also combinations or combined of plosives plus fricatives? However, several consonants are generally accepted as phonemes of the BBC accent despite not being free to occur in all positions. For example, if this and this occur freely, we need to follow the two phoneme analysis. In this case, ch and j must be classed with other single consonant phonemes, and in this way we go back to deal with ch and j as one sound each, not two separate sounds. The third argument is called, I would call it the context argument, which focuses on the phonological behavior of this group of consonants, in addition to the third argument, which we call the distribution. If ch and j were able to combine quite freely with other consonants to form consonant clusters, if we have this and this in a consonant cluster, in this case they are one and not two. Take, for example, final ch and j can be preceded by le. You see, squelch, and bulge. J is never preceded by le, and sh is preceded by le only. So they have different contexts. They behave differently. Okay. There are no other possibilities for final consonant classes containing ch and j, except that the pre-final le, or in many ne, may occur in combination with post-final, and as in squelched, hinged. So they combine freely with other consonants, form consonant classes. This is particularly useful in initial positions and not in any other positions. The last argument in favor of the one phoneme analysis is the native speaker's intuitions. I'll call it so because if we need to decide, if we need to establish for any phonological and even any other linguistic phenomena, we need to consult, we need to know how native speakers behave and how they think about functions of sounds or any other phonetic or phonological phenomenon. It has been suggested that if native speakers of English who have not been taught phonetics feel that ch and j are each one sound, we need to follow how they think, because they are native speakers of this language, even though some speakers think that ch is two sounds and j is the same. However, the results would be distorted by the fact that two consonant letters are used in the spelling. To do this test, we need to depend on illiterate, literate, those educated people, and follow their intuitions. The second problematic group of sounds is the English vowel system, and mainly or basically diphthongs and triphthongs. Why diphthongs and triphthongs are problematic in terms of phonemic analysis? Because, as we already know, diphthongs or a diphthong is a combination of two different vowels. Sometimes some naive, some beginner learners of English think that a diphthong like A is not a combination of two vowel sounds, but rather a combination of a vowel plus a consonant. The same for I, the same for Roy, O, ow, E, and etc. Why this happens? Because phonetically speaking, this part is sometimes or confused with this, yeah? And in this case, we need to just think about why do we have this phonetic feature, this phonetic nature, which is the vowel plus a consonant, which is not true. One important issue about this analysis is that yeah, where, do not otherwise occur finally in the syllable. If we have yeah, where, and in final position, and for example we have a word like play or try or employ for this one, or now for this one. In this case we need to follow this argument, but rather because yeah, where, do not occur finally, word finally or syllable finally, in this analysis the argument would be rejected. The same is existent for triphthongs, because triphthongs are misunderstood as a combination of a diphthong plus a consonant, but instead they are a combination of either three different vowels or a diphthong plus a single vowel. The third problematic consonant or sounds or phonemes in English is the syllabic consonant. We have already gotten enough information or enough knowledge about what a syllabic consonant is, and as you know, as we had already defined it in the first course, a syllabic consonant is a consonant that can phonologically behave as a vowel when it stands as a whole syllable. And because there are only vowels that can fill the position of the syllable center or syllable nucleus, this consonant will be considered as a syllabic one. B, T, K in syllable initial position are aspirated, but when preceded by C, they become unaspirated and could perhaps be transcribed as B, D, G, because contrast between these two groups of consonants become naturalized. The normal way of these consonants is that they are unaspirated, and because they are sometimes confused with voiceless. Generally, these three consonants are unaspirated, while P in syllable initial position are usually aspirated. However, in this sequence, P, T, K are unaspirated. The contrast between P and B, T and D, K and G are neutralized. Allophone. This is just a definition of the allophone. The fourth source of difficulty or problems in phonemic analysis is the vowel, or the weakest vowel that we all know as schwa. It has been suggested that there is not really a contrast between a and a, since a only occurs in weak syllables and no minimal pairs can be found to show a contrast between both in and stressed syllables. If we have a distinction or a minimal pair like this, just to compare or recognize which is which, these will be misunderstood. This new phoneme would have two allophones, one being this and the other being this. The stress mark would indicate that this one is not a schwa but rather a. Without a stress mark, this is the normal one. Other group of phonologists have suggested that schwa or a is an allophone of several other vowels, especially when we have weak forms. Sometimes it's the weak form of a, as in for. It's the weak form of u, as in to, which is pronounced as te, and etc. The conclusion is that a is not a phoneme of English, but is an allophone of several different vowel phonemes when it is a reflection, or it is a form of, when it is the weak form of other vowels. Sorry, this is no longer a phoneme, so it cannot be established as a separate phoneme, but rather as an allophonic version, which leads to complex or phonemic problem in phonemic analysis when this is adopted. What do we mean by distinctive features? This is just a reminder that a distinctive feature or distinctive features is one of the techniques that phoneticians and phonologists follow to establish for the phonemic inventory. We had used plus and minus features. If the feature is owned by the consonant, we have plus. We use a plus. This one, yeah. If the feature is not existent, we use the minus symbol. For example, for be or de, for de, we use plus voiced, plus alveolar, plus stop. But for example, we use minus voiceless and minus anything that is not owned by de. We use plus for any feature that we think de is owning. Now we need to follow some tips to solve the phonemic analysis problems, just to get to get rid of this problem, because it's inevitable to be faced. If our task is to determine whether be and pe are allophones of the same phoneme or different phonemes, we need to follow some procedures. We need to use minimal pair as a technique just to establish for the fact that says or gives us an idea whether pe and be are allophones or different phonemes. If we manage to apply the minimal pairs, if we manage to put these in different contexts by changing the meaning, we can say that they are different phonemes. If not, they are just allophonic pairs. Once we have our phonetic context, our phonetic knowledge listed or there or handy, we need to study them. Can we make any generalizations about the classes of sounds which come before and after the sounds in question? This will depend on the nature of the sounds, the relationship between each pair of sounds and the phonological context. unless we have evidence for free variation, we cannot say that they are not different sounds. If we can find a conditioning environment, that's an environment in which one sound is found and the other is not, these will be different. These will be considered as different phonemes, and we say, or we call it, complementary distribution, which depends on which depends on the phonological context or environment or the position where the consonant occurs. The final step is to select a basic allophone and derived allophone. What do we mean by this? The basic allophone is the natural, is the normal way, is the normal behavior and prediction of a certain sound. For example, we all know that when p and t and k occur in word initial position, they would be aspirated, produced with a stronger puff of air. Now, which is the basic allophone? Is this one. The basic allophone is the basic one, is the normal one. While the derived allophone is this one, which is derived, which is an exceptional case of this one. Yeah? Conditioned by the occurrence in stressed syllable and initial position. Otherwise, we go back to deal with p as this and not this. So for this reason, and according to this, p is the basic allophone, while p, the aspirated one, is the derived one. The same thing for the, for example, the S plural. The S plural is that se, which is the basic allophone. In some phonological context or morphophonemic context or environment, this plural se or s is pronounced as ze when it's attached to a word ending with voiced, as in compare cut or cat to cats, compare cats to kids. Both are plural s, but se is the basic allophone, while ze, because it's attached or it's preceded by a voiced consonant like de in kids, this tends to be the derived allophone, not the basic allophone. So if this is another step in doing the phonemic analysis. We need to check for the complementary distribution. As we said, this is a reminder of whether the two consonants are in free variation in environment or relationship, or they are in complementary distribution. If the variation, I'm talking about the allophones, if the variation of two sounds is not conditioned by the environment or context, we call it the free variation technique. If one appears while the other does not, we call it complementary distribution. Take, for example, the pronunciation of re sound. Now, basically, re is a reflection of R letter in some cases, and because re occurs a word finally and preceded or followed by a consonant, this re has no phonetic realization. Sometimes we need to put methods of the phonemic analysis to do the phonemic analysis. The aim of the phonological analysis is, or the phonological analysis has two main aims. The first one is to determine which differences of sounds are phonemic and which are non-phonemic or phonetic. The second aim is to find the inventory of phonemes of the language. And an example of the inventory of phonemes is the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet, which has or which includes the the table that we all know. We have already seen the table of of English consonants. I mean, not only English consonants, the world languages consonants and vowels. I'm sure you all remember this. This procedure is called the continuum test. It consists of minimal pairs or minimal sets. Now, when one of the characteristics of phonemes is that they change meaning. When and where? When we change one phoneme, we will change the meaning. Yeah. Take for example pen and bin. We follow the minimal pairs to establish or to determine what differences of sounds are phonemic. Are they phonemic? Yes, because this is a phoneme different from this. Why we call it phonemic? Because it changes meaning. Okay? If it does not, and by the same time, we are establishing the inventory of phonemes by means of putting p in a place different from b, g in a place different from k, and the same for t, the distinction. We are still talking about the minimal pairs and minimal sets, okay? But for this we have what we call single or double or triple phonological apposition. What do we mean by apposition? Apposition is the case, is the state when we have two or more sounds different in a number of features. If a pair of sounds differ in only one feature, we call it single phonological apposition. Take for example the comparison, the contrast between p and b. They only differ in one feature, which you all know as place of articulation, which is the distinctive feature. Okay? When we have two sounds or a pair of sounds or a couple of sounds that are different in two phonetic features, we call it double phonological apposition. And take for example p and d. They differ in two phonetic features. They only share being voiced, but they are different in place and they are different in voicing. Voiceless, voiced, bilabial, alveolar, but both are stopped. So they have two features different, and in this case we have what we call double, not single, double phonological apposition. I forgot to highlight this. You can do it. Just highlight or underline single phonological apposition, double phonological apposition, and if a couple of sounds are different in all three phonetic features, I mean place, manner, or voicing, we call it triple phonological feature. Where is it? Sorry? Yes, triple phonological feature. Right? A group of American descriptivists, types of phonologists, pioneered or led by Zeeling Harris. They declared the distributional method to be the only scientific one. So they follow some technique. If allophones of different phonemes occur in the same phonetic context, in this case their distribution is contrastive. What do you mean by this? For example, if t is aspirated and unaspirated, and both they are different phonemes, when we have different phonemes occurring in the same phonetic context, they are contrastive, just like t and d was like t and d. Yeah, when the allophones of the same phoneme or phonemes never occur in the same phonetic context. In this case, they are complementary distribution. Okay, because they don't have this, they don't occur in the same phonetic context. They are allophones. We're talking about allophones. Okay, allophones of different phonemes. For example, the aspirated t and k and p are allophones of the t, k, p phonemes. I think you have the ability to recognize which is the allophone and which is the phoneme. Okay, but when the allophones of the same phoneme never occur in the same phonetic context, they are in complementary distribution. They are not in a contrastive distribution. I do advise you to read these pages from the textbook, which I had already uploaded in a PDF form for those who don't have the physical or hard copy. This will be available on your Google Classroom. Okay. Thanks for watching.